The A-Day game, not to be confused with that other A-Day game. I don't know why these two schools do this because you would never want to confuse anything with that other school if you are an Auburn fan. And we are surrounded by Auburn right now, of course. We have gone to the source here. Kyle Loomis, E2C Network. It's everything Auburn you would ever want. If you check in with Kyle and everyone there at E2C Network. Kyle, appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about A-Day. And you're right. It seems we could come up with maybe something different. Auburn and Alabama never fight over anything. So why would either give any ground on taking over the A-Day name? It's just in our nature to have an argument with each other about something.
Well, at least they weren't played on the same day.
That's fair. And that has happened before, I believe, maybe once or twice. And so that can get a little bit, I won't say challenging, but confusing, especially for marketing and stuff like that. But that day, this past weekend, a beautiful day, it was all Auburn on A-Day.
So the setup, of course, was that the defense was spotted a 27-0 lead. Now, that's kind of dicey. They can't score, Anyway, whatever your scoring metric or what do you think of that? I would say that is a pretty fair assessment of game situations, high scoring expectation of college football games these days, and saying, okay, we want you to limit the offense to less than 4 touchdowns. Can you get this done? Can you hold this lead? So it's sat at 27-0. But when, yes, the aforementioned Towns Magoo hit on not just the game-winning field goal, but his 7th of the day to bring home the game winner at 28-27, at least provided a little drama for A-Day.
Yeah, you hit it on the head there. The format I really like with putting pressure on both the offense and defense, hold them, get to this point. It works really well for an 8-day format. So I'm glad we're continuing with that under freeze, and hopefully everybody sees the value in that. But boy, if you're going to talk about something on the day, there are several things we can discuss. But if I told you previously that you need to be watching Towns Magoo, the backup kicker in A-Day, to be excited about, I don't know. I would have been crazy. This was interesting enough to see that we had to attempt that many field goals, 7 for 7. And can I just remind folks that the starting kicker who's nursing an injury right now, Alex McPherson, he is 100% last season too. So just think about that. Never before has Auburn seen quite such a talent in the depth chart on kicker. But this guy not only is locked in his hometown team, he's from Auburn, Alabama, knocks every one of them down, but under pressure to get the offense to win, 58 yards. And I'm going to tell you, witnessing this in person, I believe it would have gone for 60, 65. Now, whether he would have been accurate is the question, because from my angle, it's hard to tell where it lined up. I couldn't see the TV version of it, but boy, that thing had some distance. He's the story of the day. And interestingly enough, I didn't think we'd be talking about that.
All right, Cam Coleman, you were not the story of the day, but you can blame that on one Towns Magoo. But otherwise, looking ahead to what is expected out of the 2024 season, Cam Coleman would maybe have a little more staying power.
Yeah, you're 100% right here. As much as we're having fun with this kicker storyline, which is a good thing to see that we're that deep there. Let's not kid ourselves here, folks. Since the day that Cam Coleman committed and signed to Auburn, it has been the Cam Coleman show in the Auburn fan collective's mind from the get-go. I've been one that's been very much pushing the caution button of let's let this kid get here. Let's see how he does against actual college talent and not just high school talent. And you could still make the case it's a spring game, right? You're playing against each other. It's quote unquote for real. But boy, he's making it real hard for me to push the caution button anymore. The kid just comes out there. Not only does he get to go out with the first group, if you want to call it the quote unquote, the first group, and shows out right away. I mean, gets a very good, I would say some people say it was overthrown, but from Hank Brown, a ball that puts it into his catch radius, which is a very big one for a bomb early in the game. And then he connects with Peyton Thorne on what some would say is an underthrown ball. But again, I'll make the case maybe there was a little bit of miscommunication there. It doesn't matter, though. He still makes the play and makes his way into the end zone with a guy on him. He looks every bit the part of it. And believe it or not, there's still some other good wide receiver things to talk about there too. But we got to be honest, Cam Coleman, so far, he looks legit.
So that's going to make it a whole lot easier on what everyone expects to be a Peyton Thorne led offense when you've got that kind of guy that if you just throw it in the vicinity, he's going to pull it down or he's going to gain better separation than most wide receivers. So that's, of course, a welcome to Hugh Freeze's
Yeah,
pass
Arsenal.
offense that was rated so low last year. But
Yes.
moving on to the quarterbacks themselves, what's your assessment of how they showed up on Saturday?
I mean, the assessment hasn't changed at all. It's still Peyton Thorne's job to lose. Coach has said as much beforehand. I believe he echoed similar sentiments afterward, if I'm not mistaken. And if you look at how the performances went, it'll show you that the best of the day overall was Peyton Thorne. Now, you could make a case that maybe each quarterback did something a little bit better in different areas. As we talk about hype around players, Walker White, the new recruit coming in, has all the hype. You know, those that choose to look at the grass is greener is always greener on the other side, always believe that this new 5-star, 4-star is coming in is going to be the next best thing. He struggled a little bit at times, and I could see, at least from my vantage point in the stadium, what looked like some frustration and frustrated himself for wanting to do better. But he's still a young kid. He's going to take some time to get used to this. He's kind of working the same format that Peyton Thorne did last year, with even a little bit more time than Peyton Thorne did, just trying to learn this new system. Peyton Thorne, on the other hand, I saw not just taking care of business, but what I liked was he acted like a general out there on the field. Very early on, you saw a couple wide receivers out of alignment, not motioning when they were supposed to, and he's getting on their butts and getting these guys in position. You got to know that your quarterback out there is the general on the field. And so that's what I liked, what I saw out of him. That if you want to talk about what impressed me, his command of the field seemed to impress me. He used his leg again as much as you can in a spring game where you're not tackling your quarterbacks. You also saw him, sling the ball down the field a few times, work it across the field. Was it a overly impressive day where you go, "Oh, Peyton Thorne's clearly the best thing that's ever happened"? Absolutely not. But to say that it's the same old thing, to say he didn't do well, is not being genuine either. The other two, Hank Brown showed his athleticism yet again, which I really love to see out there. And I think the most quote unquote efficient would have been Holden Garner, who I believe was 7 for 10 on the day. But it wasn't super exciting for him. Now, if I'm forgetting something, Auburn fans, and you're watching this, of course, that's just my assessment, what I saw out there on the field. But the story is, wrapping that up, is Peyton Thorne's your starting quarterback, and it's not going to change, at least for now.
So this spring game situation for any team in the country gets more attention because, of course, people can actually see it. But the reminder is it's 1 of 15, and unless the coaching staff is putting certain things in play for these players that they haven't in other practices, they're basically it's 1/15th of the slice. It's just that slice of about, do the math, 7 or 8% of all of spring practice. So let's
Yes,
keep that in mind. But
absolutely.
as it stands, based on what you saw on Saturday, on what you know of the rest of spring practice,
Mhm.
as we take this and now move through the off-season conditioning workouts, individual workouts into August,
Mhm.
what are those position battles and questions that have to be answered?
Well, first and foremost, it's the defensive line, the interior of the defensive line. You may be able to make the case that they had a great day because the running game was very pedestrian, but I think that somewhat was by design. Jarquez only got about 4 carries on the day for 0 yards. So you're not going to get a lot of exciting things out of the running game. But coach has said this before, has said this after. We have to get more bodies, especially interior defensive line. And so I think that's where you're going to see a need being addressed very quickly and most obviously. What are the position battles that we start looking at? We're still waiting on some of these other young wide receivers to enter into the fold. What a class it was this past year, 2024, for Auburn. How do they factor into the mix, with Cam Coleman clearly making his case to be in for some starting time, if just significant playing time, if not starting playing time? Will they push others out? Does Robert Lewis, who was a very nice surprise as a wide receiver, a seasoned wide receiver coming from Georgia State, does he continue to push for more playing time? So that's going to be interesting there. As I've kind of said with the quarterbacks, I don't think there's going to be a lot of change there, although I think some fans would want to see that. The other thing, defensive backs. Where do these players find themselves in a position group that has opened up significantly because we lost all this talent, either transfers or to mostly to the NFL draft. I mean, that entire group, the starters, the big talent is gone. So who fills in those spots? You've got a couple of things like a K and Lee who did very well on A-Day, who has got his spot locked down, but who's going to fill in that star position, that safety position? That's the biggest questions for me. And of course, you can address some of those in the transfer portal, but I think most of that's going to be addressed with who we already have here.